Shabbat Shalom. As many of you know me at this point, you know that I like tradition. Yes, I like tradition. I don't just mean the song from Fiddler on the Roof, and I don't just mean Jewish ritual. I like tradition. I like what I like. I know what I know. I like my experiences to fit into the little box of what I like, and I like the new pieces of information that I acquire to fit into the little boxes of what I know. I like what I like. I know what I know. I'm from Troy. The city is laid out in a 6-mile grid, 6 perfect square miles. I like what I like. I know what I know. And I grew up in Leave It to Beaverland. Right? But I married a woman from a sheep farm in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, for whom every day is an adventure. Now, as you can imagine, that leads to a little bit of tension in our lives here and there, as she's always pushing me to grow. As we came upon this pandemic 8 months ago, and we were told to hunker down, to shelter in place, of I like what I like and I know what I know. You remember back 8 months ago, the conversations about people in sweatpants and wearing the same clothes over and over again, hunkering down on their couches, running out of things to watch on television. But 8 months ago, we also pivoted very quickly. We learned new things. We developed new skills. We took our services, revolutionized them, and brought them to the computer. But then after a little time passed, our sweatpants became really comfortable. Our couch became really comfortable. And once again, we liked what we liked and we knew what we knew. And we became very cloistered in our homes and in our routines. And of course, it was at that point that my wife decided that we couldn't just do a normal vacation, that we had to rent a 25-foot, 11-foot tall, I was going to call it a U-Haul, but an RV, and schlep 2,500 miles round trip out to Mount Rushmore and back again for our family vacation. And as you know, because I've told you about this trip, it was by day, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. But at night, I got to look up and see the stars. We got to have campfire together as a family. Morning, I got to have that fresh cup of hot coffee while looking at the amazing scenery around me. And we had what was probably one of, if not the best vacations of our lives as a family, because we forced ourselves out of our comfort zone. And here we are now, 8 months into the quarantine, into the pandemic. And we hear the language of the day, especially as we approach wintertime. The language of our day is one of retraction. Cold, winter, dark. We're told again to hunker down, to stay put. But how do we do that when our mission as Jews is to seek justice and to achieve personal growth? How do we at the same time follow what we're being told to hunker down, to prepare for the cold, the winter, to isolate, to stay home, while at the same time to pursue justice and to achieve personal growth? As we come to this week's Torah portion now, Parashat Va-yetzei, we can't really understand the significance of Parashat Va-yetzei unless we go back a couple weeks and look at the Torah portions that came before. And of course, as we learn of Yaakov, of Jacob, and his journey, we have to think first of his dad, Isaac. What do we know about Isaac? Probably the most profound journey of Isaac's life is when he went up a mountain with his father, who then almost killed him. Okay, well, there's a journey to remember. From then on, Isaac's life is less than remarkable. Twice, Isaac is told to not leave the land of Israel. Once by Abraham, when Abraham wants to find a wife for Isaac, and again by God, when there's a famine in the land and Isaac is prepared to leave the land of Israel, just as his father Abraham had left in the middle of a famine. But twice we see that Isaac is told to hunker down, to stay put, to not break out of his box, of his shell. Isaac knew what he knew, and he liked what he liked, and he was told to keep it that way. And as a result, we see what happens to Isaac as he grows old and he's taken advantage of. He's a very weak character in the Torah. Isaac is primarily a transitionary character in the Torah between Abraham and Jacob. But as we come to Jacob, and as we learned in last week's Torah portion, Toldot, Jacob has a very different experience. In fact, in last week's Torah portion, Parashat Toldot, Jacob is told twice to leave the land of Israel. The first time, he's told to go find a wife. Isaac tells his son Jacob to leave the land of Israel and to go to Padan Aram, the birthplace of Rebekah, and to seek there a wife. And then also, Jacob is told by Rebekah to flee the land of Israel and get away from Esau, who is going to kill him, right? Esau wanted to kill Jacob because Jacob sort of swindled the birthright away from Esau. Now, it's interesting that twice Jacob would be told in last week's Torah portion to leave the land of Israel. And in fact, our rabbis, as they seek to reconcile, why does Jacob have to be told twice to leave? It's because they answer in a midrash to say the first time Jacob is told to leave the land of Israel, he's nervous about this new experience. So he goes and he finds the yeshiva of Ever, and he studies at that yeshiva and prepares himself for life in the diaspora. He arms himself with lots of Torah, which is, of course, ironic since the Torah hasn't been given yet. But that's what the Midrash comes to teach us. He arms himself with all these new experiences, this new knowledge, and roots himself in Torah in order to prepare for the next time he's told to leave, in which case he actually does go and leave the land of Israel for Padan Aram. And there he meets Lavan and, of course, comes away with Leah and with Rachel and their two servants and his four wives. And that brings us to this week's Torah portion, where Jacob is now actually preparing to leave. He's going to have that experience where he's going to meet the women who will shape his destiny. And the very beginning of our Torah portion, Parashat Va-yetzei, you're welcome to follow along with me. I'm on the 28th chapter of the book of Genesis, page 166. And it says, Va-yetzei Yaakov me Beersheva. Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. Jacob came upon a certain place and stopped there for a night, for the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. And as Rabbi Dalan reminded us, Jacob had a dream. A stairway was set on the ground and its top reached to the sky, and angels of God were going up and down on it. And the Lord was standing beside Jacob. And God said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. The ground on which you are lying I will assign to you and to your offspring. Your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall spread out to the west and the east, to the north and to the south. All the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and your descendants. Then God adds, remember, I'm with you. I will protect you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. Jacob has this amazing God encounter. But Jacob has this amazing God encounter as he's preparing to leave the land of Israel, not as he's settling down in the land of Israel. Jacob's God experience, Jacob's relationship with God did not really develop until he was prepared to leave everything that he knew, his comfort zone. Jacob did not grow in his spirituality. Jacob did not deepen in his relationships. Jacob did not attain wives and wealth until he left everything that he knew behind. You see, Isaac liked what he liked, and Isaac knew what he knew. And so he became a very weak character in our Torah. Jacob, I'm sure, liked what he liked and knew what he knew, but he was forced out of his comfort zone. He was forced to leave the land of Israel. And in so doing, he grew in his relationship to God. He grew in his relationship to others. And he set us as a people who are not known as the children of Isaac, but rather the children of Jacob. We're not the people of Isaac. We're the people of Israel. And so here we are in this week of Parashat Va-yetzei, where the very first two words are says, Va-yetzei Yaakov, leave Jacob. And everything we're being told in our lives are to hunker down, to stay put, to isolate, to get comfortable, because it's going to be a long, cold winter. So friends, for the sake of our physical health, I ask you, please, hunker down, stay put, remain in place. But for the sake of our spiritual health, I ask you, how can you follow the first two words of this Torah portion, Va-yetzei Yaakov, and leave your comfort zone, get out of what you know, and expand your horizons? Many of us have taken up a new hobby, and I invite you over the course of the next several months to find a new hobby. But that's the simplest things we can do. You can exercise anew if you haven't started exercising. But again, that's the simplest of things that we can do. More to the point, I would like to challenge you in two areas. One, I'd like to challenge you in your learning. How can you grow in your learning? Rabbi Dallin has created an amazing resource for us. They're emailed out frequently, but also live on our website. And it's How to Judaism. And there's small bite-sized segments of ways that we can grow in our knowledge of Jewish practice and Jewish life. In the coming weeks, you're going to be hearing also more and more about adult education opportunities through the synagogue. Join us, and not just in that learning, but find a friend. Learn in chavruta, learn with a partner. Force yourself out of your comfort zone. You know how to work Zoom. You know how to work the cell phone. Learn together in that way. But also in the coming weeks, as it gets colder and darker, you're going to hear more and more from us asking you to volunteer, to deliver food, to prepare food. Please answer the call. Let's get out of our comfort zones. Let's get out of what's easy. Let's follow the message of this week's Torah portion, Va-yetzei Yaakov. And remember that we're not going to truly have that encounter with God. We're not going to grow as humans and as Jews until we get out of what we know, until we don't just do what we like, but also what we need in order to grow. So this week of Parashat Va-yetzei, I invite you to join us on a journey of growth, of learning, of volunteering, of coming together as a community in ways that we're maybe not used to, but really getting out of our comfort zone. This week of Parashat Va-yetzei, can we indeed follow Jacob's lead and Va-yetzei and get out of everything we know? Adonai ozi amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. May God bless us with the strength to get beyond our comfort zones. And in so doing, may God reward us with the blessings of joy, of health, of healing, of growth, and most of all, of shalom. And let us say together, Amen and Shabbat Shalom.